Persia didn't fall. It was renamed, and the reason why exposes something far bigger than one country's history. It exposes how a name can control what the world thinks of you, what it fears in you, and what it forgets about you. This is not a story about geography. It is a story about power, and it started long before 1935. Picture a plateau, surrounded by mountains on almost every side, scorching desert to the east, ancient trade routes cutting through the middle. This was not empty land. This was a crossroads, and for thousands of years, whoever controlled it controlled the flow of goods, ideas, and power across the ancient world. But who were the first people to truly call it home?
Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more awe-inspiring stories of faith, survival, and miracles.
Around 4,000 years ago, a group of nomadic tribes began moving into this region. They came from the north. They spoke languages that were distant relatives of Greek, Latin, and, believe it or not, English. The word for mother in their tongue was Madar. Father was Pedar. These were not Arab people, not Turkish, not Semitic. They were something older, something distinct. And they would split into two separate peoples who would take very different paths. The first group, the Medes, settled in the northwest. They organized quickly, built power fast, and for a long time, they were the dominant force in the entire region. Nobody was looking at the second group. The second group, the Persians, moved south into a quieter region called Pars. Fertile enough, strategically placed, but nothing about them suggested they were about to change the world. They were the underdogs, the ones history wasn't watching. That was a mistake, because out of that quiet southern region, something was building. Slowly at first, then all at once. And it would begin with one man whose name you probably know, but whose real story has been buried under centuries of misunderstanding. His name in the old Persian language was Kurosh. The world would later call him Cyrus. And before you picture a warlord on horseback cutting through cities, stop, because that image is exactly wrong. Every empire that came before Cyrus operated the same way. You lose, you suffer. Your temples get burned, your people get scattered, your gods get mocked. That was the standard playbook of power in the ancient world. Conquer, humiliate, control. Cyrus threw that playbook away. When he defeated the Medes, the very people who had dominated the region for generations, he did not destroy them, he absorbed them. He kept their administrators in their posts, he respected their traditions, and almost overnight, a potential enemy became a loyal part of something bigger. Then he kept going. Babylon fell to Cyrus in 539 BC, and what happened next shocked the ancient world. Instead of looting the temples, he restored them. Instead of enslaving the population, he freed them. There were thousands of Jewish people held captive in Babylon at the time. Cyrus let them go home. He didn't just let them leave, he funded the rebuilding of their temple in Jerusalem. Think about that for a moment. A Persian king funding a Jewish temple in the middle of what is now Iraq. The Jewish scriptures would later describe him not as a conqueror, but as a liberator, chosen by God himself.
That was not an accident. Cyrus understood something that most rulers never figure out. Loyalty is worth more than fear. Fear makes people obey. Loyalty makes people fight for you. Under Cyrus and then his successor Darius I, the Persian Empire became something the world had never seen. It stretched from the borders of modern India all the way to Egypt, from Central Asia down to the shores of the Mediterranean. Dozens of nations, hundreds of languages, all operating under one system. And that system was extraordinary. They built roads that connected thousands of miles of territory, a messaging network so fast that information could cross the empire in days. A tax and administration system that didn't just extract wealth, it managed it, recorded it, and redistributed it. Scholars today call the Achaemenid Empire the world's first true superpower, and they are not exaggerating. But here is what made it fragile. An empire built on cultural respect only works as long as the man at the top understands that balance. Remove that understanding, and the whole thing becomes a target, a prize, something worth taking. And from the West, a young man was already watching, already planning, already convinced that the greatest empire on earth was his to claim. He was not yet 20 years old, and within 15 years he would bring the entire Persian Empire to its knees. Alexander of Macedon crossed into Persian territory in 334 BC with an army that, by the standards of the time, was not especially large. The Persians had faced bigger threats. They had beaten bigger armies. They had never faced anything like him. In 3 major battles fought across what is now Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, Alexander dismantled the Persian military machine piece by piece. The Persian king Darius III fled twice. The second time, his own men killed him. And just like that, the empire that had ruled half the world for 2 centuries was gone. But now comes the part that nobody talks about. Alexander walked into the Persian capital, Persepolis, and did something his own generals never expected. He didn't tear it down. He sat in it. He studied it. He put on Persian robes. He adopted Persian court customs. He married a Persian princess. Then he married another one. He began presenting himself not as the destroyer of Persia, but as the legitimate heir to its throne. His generals were furious. These were men who had marched thousands of miles believing they were liberating the world from Persian tyranny. Now their leader was dressing like a Persian king and demanding they bow in the Persian style. Several plots formed against him. The tension inside his own camp became as dangerous as any battlefield. But Alexander had seen something his generals hadn't. You cannot rule what you destroy. The Persian Empire was not just territory. It was a system, a language, a way of administering millions of people across thousands of miles. If he burned it down, he would spend the rest of his life trying to rebuild something that already existed. So instead, he kept it. He merged it with what he had brought from Greece. And for a brief moment, it looked like East and West might genuinely fuse into something new. Then, Alexander died. Babylon, 323 BC. He was 32 years old. No confirmed successor, no clear plan, and an empire that stretched from Greece to the edge of India, with no one strong enough to hold it together. Within a generation, it fractured. His generals carved it into pieces and went to war with each other. The Persian heartland fell to a dynasty called the Seleucids, Greeks ruling Persian land, trying to hold together something they only partially understood. Persia, as a political empire, was gone, but Persia as an idea, as a culture, as an identity, that was still very much alive. Buried under Greek administration, yes. Pushed to the edges, yes, but alive, waiting. And the people who would bring it back were already there, living in the same southern region where it had all started, in Pars, where it had always begun. Empires fall. That part is always in the history books. What the books rarely tell you is what survives the fall. After Alexander and after the Seleucids came the Parthians, a dynasty from the northeast that controlled the Persian region for nearly 5 centuries. They were not deeply Persian in culture. They were pragmatic rulers who kept things stable. But underneath their rule, Persian identity quietly held its shape. The language continued. The traditions continued. The memory of Cyrus and Darius continued. Then, in 224 AD, everything shifted. A ruler named Ardashir from the region of Fars, the original Persian heartland, defeated the last Parthian king and established a new dynasty. He called it the Sasanian Empire, and from the very beginning, the message was clear. This was not a new empire. This was a restoration. The Sasanians claimed direct descent from the Achaemenid kings. They revived Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian religion built around fire, light, and the eternal struggle between good and evil as the official state faith. They rebuilt temples. They promoted Persian art, Persian language, Persian philosophy. They wanted the world to know that Persia had not been erased, it had only been interrupted. For over 4 centuries, the Sasanian Empire stood as one of the most powerful forces on earth. They fought the Romans to a standstill. They controlled the Silk Road. They produced some of the finest architecture, metalwork, and literature of the ancient world. But power always attracts challengers. By the early 600s AD, both the Sasanians and their longtime rivals, the Byzantines, had been fighting each other for so long that both empires were exhausted, treasuries drained, armies stretched, populations tired of endless war. And into that exhaustion, something arrived from the Arabian Peninsula that neither empire had taken seriously. It was a new faith, moving fast, carried by armies that fought with a conviction that professional soldiers couldn't match. In 636 AD, Arab forces met the Sasanian army at a battle called Al-Qadisiyah. The Persians lost, and within a decade, the entire Sasanian Empire had collapsed. 4 centuries of restoration, gone. But here is what makes Persia different from every other empire that fell to the Arab conquest. Most cultures in that region were absorbed completely. Their languages disappeared, their identities dissolved. Persia did not disappear. It adapted, it bent, it found a way to survive inside the new world that was being built around it. And the way it did that is one of the most remarkable stories in all of human history. Because Persia didn't just survive the arrival of Islam. In many ways, it quietly took it over from the inside. When Arab armies took control of the Persian heartland in the mid-600s AD, the political structure of the region changed almost overnight. A new language arrived, a new religion arrived, a new ruling class arrived. On the surface, it looked like Persia had finally been erased for good. It was not.
Yes, Arabic became the official language of religion and government. Yes, Zoroastrianism was pushed to the margins. Yes, the old Persian aristocracy lost its formal power. But culture does not work like a light switch. You cannot turn off a civilization that has been running for 2,000 years just by changing who sits on the throne. Persian scholars, poets, and administrators did something clever. They learned Arabic, they mastered it, and then they used it to carry Persian ideas into the heart of the new Islamic world. Within a century of the conquest, Persian thinkers were running the administrative systems of the Arab Caliphate. Persian poetry was being read in the courts of Baghdad. Persian mathematical and medical knowledge was being translated, studied, and built upon across the Islamic world. The great works that Europe would later rediscover during the Renaissance, algebra, astronomy, medicine, many of them passed through Persian hands first. The Persian language itself survived by absorbing Arabic vocabulary while keeping its own structure and soul. The result was a new form of Persian, still recognizably Persian, but richer and more layered than before. Poets like Ferdowsi used it to write the Shahnameh, an epic poem that retold the entire history of Persia in the new language. Over 50,000 verses, a deliberate act of cultural preservation dressed up as literature. This was not surrender, this was strategy. Meanwhile, something else was happening beneath the surface of Islamic politics. The question of who should lead the Muslim world after the Prophet Muhammad had split Islam into 2 camps, those who followed the elected caliphs and those who believed leadership belonged to the Prophet's direct descendants. The first group became the Sunni majority. The second became the Shia minority. Persia had its own reasons to be drawn toward the Shia position. It was the side that challenged the Arab establishment, the side that spoke of justice for the oppressed, the side that felt, to many Persians, like resistance. That sympathy would simmer for centuries. It would not fully ignite until a dynasty arrived that understood something profound, that religion, wielded correctly, is not just a matter of faith, it is the most powerful political tool ever invented. That dynasty was coming, and when it arrived, it would not just change how Persia was governed, it would permanently separate Persian identity from the rest of the Islamic world in a way that still shapes every headline about the Middle East today.
In 1501, a teenage boy rode into the city of Tabriz in northwest Iran and declared himself Shah. His name was Ismail. He was 14 years old, and in the decades that followed, he and his successors would reshape the entire religious and cultural identity of Persia in ways that are still felt every single day. The dynasty he founded was called the Safavid Empire. Their first act was one of the most consequential decisions in the history of the Islamic world. They declared Twelver Shia Islam, a specific branch of Shia thought, the mandatory state religion. Not a suggestion, not an option, mandatory. In a region that had been predominantly Sunni for centuries, this was not a quiet administrative change. It was a rupture. Scholars who refused were removed. Communities that resisted were pressured. The transformation was enforced with the full power of the state, but it worked. Within a few generations, the Persian heartland had shifted, and that shift did something no military campaign had ever fully achieved. It drew a clear line between Persia and the Arab Sunni world to its west. To the east and west, powerful Sunni empires, the Ottomans in Turkey, the Mughals in India, surrounded Safavid Persia. The religious difference became a political border as real as any wall. At the same time, the Safavids were building something beautiful. Their capital, Isfahan, became one of the most architecturally stunning cities on earth. Mosques with turquoise domes that looked like pieces of sky brought down to earth. Palaces, gardens, bridges that doubled as gathering places for poets and philosophers. Persian carpet weaving reached heights of artistry during this period that have never been surpassed. And through it all, a name began to quietly resurface: Iran.
It was not a new word. It came from the ancient term Ariana, meaning the land of the noble people, or the Aryans, and it had been used within the region for centuries. But until now, the outside world had always called this land Persia. The Safavid period began to strengthen the internal use of Iran as a term of self-identification. Persia was what foreigners called it. Iran was what it called itself. For now, both names existed side by side. The tension between them was manageable, almost invisible. But a new century was coming, and with it, a new kind of ruler. A man who had studied in Europe, who had watched how modern nations projected power, who understood that in the modern world, image was everything, and he had decided that the image called Persia had to go. Before we get to the moment the name officially changed, it is worth sitting with something for a minute. Why did two names exist at all? The answer goes back to the Greeks. When the armies of ancient Greece first encountered this civilization, they didn't meet all of it. They met its southwestern corner, the region called Pars, or Persis in Greek. So that is what they called the whole thing, Persia, named after one province, applied to an entire civilization. It would be like someone arriving in the United States for the first time, landing in Florida and deciding to call the entire country Florida from that point forward. The name sticks because it is the first name farmers learned. And once a name gets written into enough maps and books and treaties, it takes on a life of its own. Meanwhile, the people living inside that civilization had always used a different name, Iran, rooted in the ancient word Ariana, meaning something closer to land of the noble ones or land of the free people. It was not a geographic label, it was an identity, a statement of who they were, not where they happened to be standing. So for centuries, this duality lived quietly in the background. Persians called their land Iran among themselves. The outside world called it Persia on their maps. Most of the time, this caused no real conflict. It was just the gap between how a people sees itself and how the world chooses to see them. But by the late 1800s and early 1900s, that gap was starting to matter more. The Western world's image of Persia had calcified into something specific, exotic, mysterious, ancient, beautiful in a distant, unthreatening way. Persian rugs, Persian poetry,
Persian cats for that matter. The word Persia had been filtered through centuries of Western romanticism until it meant something soft, something belonging to the past. For a country trying to modernize, trying to build railways and establish a national army and negotiate with European powers as an equal, that image was a problem. There was also something darker embedded in the Western idea of Persia. Going all the way back to the Greeks, Persia had been portrayed as the empire of excess and tyranny, the enemy of freedom, the threat from the East. Those ancient narratives had never fully disappeared. They had just gone underground, shaping the way Western diplomats and politicians thought about the region without even realizing it. Imagine trying to negotiate a modern trade deal while the other side of the table is secretly thinking of you as a character from an ancient myth. That was the reality facing the Iranian monarchy in the 1930s, and the man now sitting on that throne had spent enough time in Europe to understand exactly how the game worked. He had watched how nations used symbols, language, and image to project power. He had seen how a name could open doors or close them. He had made his decision. And in 1935, he picked up a pen and changed history with a single circular letter sent to every embassy in the world. Reza Shah Pahlavi had not come from privilege. He rose through the military, seized power in a coup in 1921, and by 1925 had made himself Shah of Iran. He was practical, impatient, and absolutely convinced that his country needed to modernize or be left behind. He had watched what Mustafa Kemal Ataturk was doing in neighboring Turkey, dismantling the old Ottoman identity, building a new, secular, modern nation from the ground up, changing the alphabet, banning traditional dress, forcing a country to look forward instead of backward. Reza Shah admired that approach, and he intended to apply his own version of it to Persia. In 1935, he sent a diplomatic circular to every foreign embassy and government that maintained relations with his country. The message was simple and direct. The country would no longer be referred to as Persia in official communications. The correct name, the only name, was Iran. On the surface, it looked like a simple administrative update, a matter of paperwork. It was anything but. By requesting the name Iran, Reza Shah was doing several things at once. He was rejecting the Greek origin label that had defined his country in foreign eyes for over 2,000 years. He was aligning his nation with its own internal self-image, and he was reaching toward a particular kind of modernity that was very specific to the 1930s. The word Iran, meaning land of the Aryans, carried weight in that decade that it does not carry today. In 1930s Europe, Aryan identity had become associated with a certain vision of racial and civilizational strength. Reza Shah understood that framing. He used it deliberately, positioning Iran as an ancient and noble civilization that deserved a seat at the table of modern nations, not as an exotic relic, but as a proud and sovereign state. Inside the country, the reaction was not uniformly celebratory. Many Iranian intellectuals and ordinary citizens felt something close to grief. Persia was not just a foreign label to them. It was the name of Cyrus, of Darius, of the poets and philosophers and scientists who had made their civilization great. Abandoning it felt to some like cutting a thread that ran all the way back 4,000 years. Others saw it differently. Iran was the name they had always used for themselves. Reclaiming it felt like an act of dignity, of self-determination. Why should they continue to be named after a province, filtered through a Greek mispronunciation, just because that is what foreigners had written on their maps? Both feelings were real. Both had merit. But history did not pause to resolve the debate. The name changed. The world slowly adjusted, and Persia faded from official use, surviving mainly in cultural contexts. The name of a rug, a cat breed, a style of cooking. Then came 1979. The Islamic Revolution overthrew the monarchy. Ayatollah Khomeini established the Islamic Republic. The hostage crisis put Iran on American television every night for 444 days, and the word Iran became permanently fused in the Western mind with anger, tension, and threat. Something strange happened in the decades that followed. As Iran became a word loaded with geopolitical fear, Persia quietly became something else entirely. Beautiful, romantic, safe. People began describing themselves as Persian rather than Iranian in Western cities, not because the history was different, but because the feelings attached to the two words were completely different. Same land, same history, two completely opposite emotional reactions, which raises a question that nobody has fully answered yet. When you change a name, what exactly are you changing? Not the land. The mountains of the Iranian plateau are the same mountains that Cyrus looked at 3,000 years ago. Not the people. The descendants of those ancient Persian tribes are still there, still speaking a language with roots older than Latin, still producing poetry and mathematics and philosophy that the world quietly benefits from without always knowing where it came from. What changes is the story, and the story is everything. The name Persia carried a story, an old one, heroic in parts, tyrannical in others, romantic in the way that only dead empires can be romantic. It was a story the West had been telling about this land since the Greeks, which means it was never fully the Iranian story to begin with. It was always, to some degree, someone else's version of them. Iran was an attempt to take that story back. And for a few decades, it worked. The country modernized, it built infrastructure, it negotiated as a sovereign nation. The name Iran sat in international documents without the weight of 2,000 years of Greek and European projection pressing down on it.
Then 1979 happened, and the story changed again, not because the land changed, not because the history changed, but because the political moment changed. And names absorb the moments they lived through. They carry the weight of what happens while they're being used. So today, Persia feels like beauty, and Iran feels like tension, even though they're the same word for the same place, for the same people. That is not an accident. That is how power works. Control the name, and you influence the feeling. Influence the feeling, and you shape what people are willing to believe, what they are willing to fear, what they are willing to forgive. Every civilization on Earth has a version of this story, a moment where the name they carried stopped matching the story they wanted to tell. Most of them never got to choose a new one. Persia did, Iran did. Whether that choice achieved what it was meant to achieve is a question that historians and the Iranian people themselves are still debating today. But there is one more layer to this story that most people never reach, because the name change in 1935 was not the first time this land reinvented itself, and it was not the last. There is a pattern running through this entire history, a cycle of erasure and revival that goes much deeper than politics or diplomacy. And once you see that pattern, you will never look at a map the same way again.